The title of this conference is Your History is Not Your Destiny. And I was looking at that and I was thinking, actually, your history is your destiny unless you've been quinged. And a lot of you will know the quing is a Manx word, and it describes what joins the horse and the plough. And it brings balance to the horse and plough. So if you have if you've had experiences that help you to become more balanced, you've been quinged. And then your history doesn't have to be your destiny. Now we see what happens. Down. Down. Oh, yes. So I'm going to talk a bit about childhood, but it's also relevant for now. It's relevant for adults. If we have adverse childhood experiences when we're very young, it actually has a biological impact on the body and the brain. We have brain circuits, we have neurons in our brain, loads and loads, billions of them, and they get disrupted. They can't work in the same way as they would if we didn't have those horrible experiences. We have biological changes in the way that we respond to stress. So I'm standing up here, I can admit to having had some adverse childhood experiences. And my stress response doesn't work in the same way as someone's who hasn't had those experiences. My stress response has an issue with turning itself off. Okay? If you come to my workshop this afternoon, you'll learn more about that. So our learning systems don't work as well. And our immune systems are compromised because there are things going on in our body that prevent us from being well, when we have stress. I'm shaking now. Okay. Let's do a little dance. Oh, hang on. Up, down, up, down, up, down. I could do a dance. Right. So if we have great experiences as a child, we get great communities. If we don't have good experiences as children, our communities aren't successful. And when I say successful, I mean that people can actually talk to each other. How many people in your street do you actually know? I don't know very many people in my street. Since I came over here, I know more because I did Cormac's courses and thought, yeah, I know my neighbours because we've been taking a hedge down in the garden and the fence fell down. We got to know the neighbours over the space. And now we have new neighbours and they've put a new fence up and it's higher than the old one and we don't even know their names. And they've bought blinds for their kitchen and they pull the blinds down so we don't even see them. Which is probably a good thing because it saves their privacy. If we have good experiences when we're children, we have healthy brains. If we have negative experiences, that weakens our brain architecture. And kids, when they're born, when you get a newborn child and you hold it in your arm like this, and the child goes, ah, and you go, oh, and the child goes, ah, because it's responding to you going, oh, and you go, oh, you're so cute. I was doing it with a dog last night. And the child goes, ah, and you go, oh, you're so lovely. I love you so much. That's called serve and return. Serve and return is vital to building your brain circuits. Right? If you don't have serve and return as a child, then your circuits don't work as well as they should. Your brain architecture isn't as strong as it could be. And I've got some lovely videos for people to watch this afternoon that will explain that in more detail. So negative experiences weaken our brain architecture. Yes. 4 key points, because I haven't got long. Brains and skills are built over time. We have this architecture. It starts off with simple circuits, and then learning happens, and we build more complex circuits as we go. And we end up, maybe, with a fully mature brain around the age of 25 to 30. Our brains actually change over the whole of time anyway. It's called plasticity. It's quite fun. And it means that we can actually change things that happen to us as a child and not experience the difficulties that we've learned to behave. That doesn't make sense. So we learn particular behaviors in order to adapt to the stresses that we have. And when we are in a community, when we've grown up, if we get balanced, we don't have to do those behaviors anymore, which is quite helpful. Toxic stress derails healthy development, right? So any child that experiences toxic stress is going to be off the scale in terms of their behavior and what's happening to them. Buffers, that's all of you. You're a buffer. This community, I can see some of you over there. Yeah? This community is a buffer. They are buffers for each other. And whether or not they've had buffers in childhood, they're being buffered now. And it means that whatever people are going through in their life, there's always someone that you can talk to. There's always someone that can help you get through whatever it is you're going through. And that's really important. And many people don't have that right now in their lives because community, as we know it, has kind of disappeared. And the constant activation of the stress response is what happens when we have adverse childhood experiences. Again, that's more this afternoon. But when we have them, our stress response is physically unable to turn itself off. So I stand up here, I've had adverse childhood experiences, and my stress response is activated. And I can feel that running through my body. I have been quinged, yeah. I've had a lot of therapy. I am a therapist. And even though I've done that, I'm still standing up here and I'm shaking, right? That's what happens to me when my stress goes whoop. And the minute I realized I had to stand up here, my stress response went whoop. Okay. And even Mike's exercise, I couldn't close my eyes because the minute I closed my eyes, that stress response was yeah. I still did it, and I still felt better afterwards, but without closing my eyes. So, serious lifelong consequences are things like, if you don't have any adverse childhood experiences, you're very unlikely to go to prison or be a perpetrator of violence. If you've had 4 or more adverse childhood experiences, you're 14 times more likely to be a perpetrator of violence. You're 14 times more likely to be a victim of violence. You're only 2.5 times more likely to eat badly. Interesting. 6.5 times more likely to smoke. Yeah. 11 times more likely to smoke cannabis. 20 times more likely to go to prison. 20 times more likely than someone who hasn't had adverse childhood experiences. So that tells you that having adverse childhood experiences seriously impacts our community. And in America, they've been running this project in New York. I can't remember the doctor's name offhand. Because when you get stressed, your brain shrinks, okay, and you can't remember things. There's a wonderful doctor out there. She's been working with 24 different pediatric clinics, and they've been doing an ACE study of every mother that comes in. It's a safe environment, it's a community environment. There's no worries about social services or, the women feel safe when they go there. And it's done seamlessly as part of the whole project. So when the women go in, they say, okay, can we just talk to you about your childhood? Do you want to be the best mum you can be for your child? Yes, of course. Okay, so if we look at what's happened to you when you're a kid, yeah, we might be able to help you with whatever happened to you so that that doesn't ever happen to your child. And the women are on board because who doesn't want to be a good parent? So they educate them about trauma, they educate them about adverse childhood experiences. They tell them why they're experiencing what they're experiencing in their bodies, why they're so stressed, why they act out when they get stressed. Once upon a time, my dad said to me, "It's about time you've got control of your emotions, young lady." Unfortunately, as a child, I thought that he meant you shouldn't have them. I was completely wrong. What he meant was, You're overreacting. The way that you're experiencing things is too intense. I learned that eventually, and now my reactions aren't quite as big as they used to be. So there is always hope, and the community that we have here, the communities that we do have, the communities that Chris works with. Yeah, I actually did have, I was looking at the procurement stuff for Pembrokeshire, and they had something for, it was some sort of shelter for homeless people, and it was all about community. And when I read it, I thought, oh, they know nurture development, yeah? It was totally ABCD all the way through, so I just want to tell you that. When we start thinking about our communities as buffers, when we start thinking about our community as, how many people do you support? And how many people do you say, wow, that's a great idea. What are you doing about it? How do you do that? Oh, well, I know this person. Well, I know that person. Let's connect you with that person. What we do when we build a community is we provide all of the things that we didn't have when we were kids because we had adverse childhood experiences. We provide them. And in that space, people get better. Rex is going to talk to you about therapeutic communities. Rex is awesome. You've got to listen to him. All right. There's no pressure. And I've worked in a prison therapeutic community. And one of the things that the communities do there is they take people who've had adverse childhood experiences. I don't think I ever heard of anyone being there that hadn't had adverse childhood experiences. And they teach them how to be in a community, how to relate to each other, how to manage their emotional stuff, how to look at what they've done, how to deal with it. And they leave the therapeutic community able to be a member of society. Yeah? It's really, community is the most powerful therapy that you can give everyone or anyone. How long have I got? How many? 3 minutes. A few minutes. 2 minutes. I can't hear you, I'm deaf. Okay. I'll just carry on. How do we build the good foundations? We develop in an environment of relationships anyway when we're kids, don't we? Yeah, first of all, it's our mum or our dad, and then it's maybe our grandparents, and then it's wider members of the community. And these days, we're all so worried about paedophiles, our children don't get to go out in the community. Paedophiles, I don't think the number of paedophiles has changed. I think the fact that we're all scared of them has changed things, and our kids don't go out to play anymore. How can you be part of a community if you're not going out to play and being with other people? Can you be part of a community when you're on an iPad all the time? Yes. You can be part of a gaming community. My son taught me that. He has a great group of friends, yeah, online. He also has friends offline, but he has friends online too. Community provides you with a serve and return, and it can make things better despite how old you are. No stress in and of itself is toxic. Are you all sitting up now? What? No stress is in and of itself toxic. We have good stress, tolerable stress, and toxic stress. I'm not even going to get to do that because I've only got 2 minutes, or even 1 minute now. Okay. Toxic stress only happens if there is no buffer. If you have a child, in fact, they've done research on kids in the States, and they measured their cortisol levels. That's a stress hormone. It gets elevated when you get stressed. And if you have children that have serve and returns, they have these good relationships with their parents and their caregivers, they put these children, bless, into a stressful situation, and those children don't have elevated levels of cortisol in their brains. They do all the same behaviors as kids who have had toxic stress and who are stressed out. They have lots of raised cortisol in their brains, but the children who have good buffers, they don't have raised levels of cortisol, even though they're in the same situation as the other child. It's a stressful situation, and they're doing the same behaviors. They're hiding behind their mothers, and they're shaking and crying because they're scared of the clown. Yeah. they don't have raised levels of cortisol. And she said it's really hard to get kids with a secure attachment, with serve and return in their lives, to actually have raised levels of cortisol in their brains. So their stress responses are beautiful. They work properly. Children who don't have those experiences don't have the same chances. The stress response gets turned on and it doesn't turn off. Good stress, that's normal. We have to learn how to deal with stress. So we have these moments when we go to school, we meet people for the first time. We get an injection at the doctor's, ow. Yeah. They're momentary. They don't last long. Brief, and we're supported by our parents. So we learn how to deal with stress. So that's good stress. Tolerable stress, if someone in your family dies, especially if it's a parent, that's not easy. Being in a natural disaster. Dr. Judy Cameron studied the kids in Hurricane Katrina. She was looking at their brains and how they were developing over time. Those who had parents, they'd lost everything. They were moved to other parts of the country. It was a really terrible thing. Those who had parents that said, it's going to be okay, we're alive, we're together, we love you, come and have a hug. See, I like that research. Yeah. Those children didn't have any impact on their brain development whatsoever. They were fine. The children that didn't have supportive parents didn't do well. So toxic stress is when you don't have a buffer, and it's really important that we know that. If it's not present, we suffer. And that's physical as well as mental. What kind of experiences? Abusive relationships, chronic neglect, physical, mental, sexual abuse. These days, loss of a job, loss of social status. They didn't stressors. Stressors used to be, oh my God, there's the lion, let me run. Oh my God, I'm being eaten by the lion, yeah? These days, stressors are pervasive. They're kind of in there, and they're there all the time. So we live at a higher level of stress than we used to. We didn't used to get stressed until we saw the lion. Now the lion's there, ready to eat us in the form of our boss. Yeah. Witnessing violence, parental addiction, parental mental health issues, and poverty. Interesting, that one, isn't it? Poverty. Poverty creates a situation where parents aren't able to interact with their children as much as they might like because they have to go out to work, they have to get money in, they have to sort things out. Yeah. And sometimes nutrition is massive in this. Yeah. Having the right nutrition helps to build the brain. If you don't have the right nutrition because you're poor and you live on fish fingers and beans, yeah, fish isn't bad. Beans aren't bad. But if you have them every night and that's all you have, that's not really good. They can all affect. What happens when someone experiences toxic stress? We end up with high levels of adrenaline and cortisol in our bodies. They're stress hormones. If the toxic stress doesn't end, the stress response doesn't work properly. It changes the way that we see the world. So we think bad things are going to happen. I'm going to get up here, I'm going to stand here, and everything's going to go to pot. I'm so glad I didn't swear then. Right. We feel unprotected. We feel unsafe. Imagine what that's like for a child standing in the corner who knows if he turns around, he's going to get beaten. You turn around, I'm going to beat you. You stay there, you don't move. You stay there all afternoon, don't expect food. You've been bad. You turn the TV channel over. Right. We don't know who's trustworthy and who isn't. How can we know whether anyone is safe if our parents aren't safe? 1 minute we're loved, 1 minute we're not. Yeah. Our emotions are intense and contradictory. I love you, don't leave me. I hate you, don't leave me. Actually, there's a book called I Hate You, Don't Leave Me. It's a really good book. And we get activated. That just means we get stressed. Our bodies act out more easily. The neurons in our hippocampus shrink, literally shrink. Right? They are so overloaded by the electrical activity in our brain that they go, oh, let me save myself. and they shrink. And that means we can't think straight. So anybody that notices, when I get stressed, I can't think straight, that's because your neurons have shrunk. Okay. It doesn't mean you've got a smaller brain and they can grow back. And what's wonderful is, if you have toxic stress as an adult, and you're then in a supportive situation, your neurons grow back, and you can function again. We can't regulate our behavior appropriately. We get angry, we act out, we punch people. 20 times more likely to go to prison. Or we might shut down and not talk to anyone at all. We're less flexible. Has to be the way it is, or else. Anger management, major issue. We're more easily overwhelmed. We have these perceptions that everyone's out to get us, really. Yeah, and if they're out to get us, we need to be careful, don't we? When our body and brain go permanently onto alert in the stress response, we go into defense mode. I'm sure that everyone in this room will know when you are stressed, you want to listen to someone else. You want them to understand what's going on. You know? No, this is it. This is it. We're in defense mode. We can't listen to people when we're in defense mode. And our immune system, it actually has a real impact on our immune system, and our white blood cells don't work so well. So we have more levels of inflammation in the body, and all sorts of things arise out of that, like arthritis, diabetes, fibromyalgia, asthma, heart attacks, strokes, blah, blah, blah. All of that. If you've had adverse childhood experiences, your chances of developing one of those diseases is up through the roof. If the support's constant and available, we can calm down. We can return to normal. If we don't have a buffer, the stress response stays activated. Constant activation overloads the body. And I think you now know that has lifetime serious consequences. So it's something that we really need to look at. And one of the things that I was looking for before I came here, I'm looking at you directly, Ralph, right? I was looking for an ACE study. Wales has done one. That's where I've given you the figures from. The United States has done one. Scotland's done one. The Isle of Man hasn't. They do a health and lifestyle survey. So I looked at that. And as I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, wow, I bet there's lots of adverse childhood experiences here. Okay, thank you. The effects of toxic stress last a lifetime. And if we don't want to continue that through generations, then we need to be looking at adverse childhood experiences and figuring out what people want and need in order to make the changes. One of the things that can work come on. Oh, there we go. There we go. That's what the figures I've already given you. Is community. Because it supports all of the things that we need in order to be okay. So let's do it. Let's keep building our community. Yeah. I love you all. Okay. Thank you for listening. All right. And if you need a hug, anyone wants a hug, I'm over here.